Well, it's good to be back with you tonight, and it was good to be here this morning to have an opportunity to preach to you a little bit. But tonight, as I promised, we're going to talk a little bit about Michigan and the work going on up there. You've been helping to support me, and I appreciate that very much. And so the elders have asked me to come down and share with you a little bit about the work we've been doing, and so I'm happy to do that. And so I just have some slides here to show you a little bit what Michigan is all about. And some people, when you tell them you're from northern Michigan, there's some questions that come up. People want to know certain things, like what it's like, and is it really that cold, and does it really snow that much? And so we'll get to some of that as well. And then at the end, we're going to talk about the church and the situation up there more in detail. And so hopefully I'll be able to make all my points and not forget anything that I wanted to mention. But first of all, I wanted to clarify one thing, and that is where Jennifer and I live. We don't live in the same town as where the church is located. We actually live about 40 minutes north in the town of Gaylord, Michigan. So where is Gaylord, Michigan? Well, if you're going to talk to people about Michigan, one handy way to do that is to just show them your hand, and you can point to where you live just right on your hand without having to describe in detail where you live exactly with relation to, this road or this many miles or anything like that. And so if I was to take my hand and point to where we live right up there, right near the tip of the mitt, as they call it. So we're definitely in the northern half of the lower peninsula. And I know you're familiar a little bit with Tim Anderson and his work. He's actually in the upper peninsula. But really, if we wanted to go up there and see him, it's only about an hour and 15-minute drive. So it's not too bad. And so that's one of the advantages of living in Gaylord, is that it's kind of a crossroads for northern Michigan. So you can see here where the town is located, up there about the 45th parallel. In fact, there are lots of signs around telling you that you're at the 45th parallel. And so it's kind of a neat thing to see. You don't see that too often. Now, with respect to the rest of the state, here are some of the major cities, and you can see Gaylord is located kind of in the middle. So no matter where you want to go, Gaylord is a pretty good place to start from. You can get to the upper peninsula pretty quickly, as also you can reach the bigger cities in the southern part of the state without having to drive too far. But everything is a little bit further. You have to drive a little bit further typically, but keep in mind that the traffic is much less than you would have, say, on 36 out here in Avon. So you don't have to worry about as many cars. But it does take a little while to get most places. But it's pretty scenery, and we're blessed to live there. Well, what's it like living in Gaylord? Well, basically, Gaylord is a town whose economy is basically just built on tourism. We have a lot of things available in the summer as well as the winter that cause tourists to want to come and visit our town. And so you can see there a picture of Main Street. Here's another picture. Lots of little shops and restaurants and whatnot. And our city hall. You can see the buildings here have kind of a theme going, and that was on purpose. So they meant to do it that way. So it's a nice town, and there's our house. We got a nice place there and a nice big yard that I have to keep track of and mowed and raked, which is a lot of work, by the way. Okay, so sometimes people ask, well, is it near any famous landmarks? If I'm up there, what am I going to see that's going to be, it's going to make my trip worthwhile? Well, obviously, probably the biggest thing is the Great Lakes themselves. Basically, the whole shape of the state is shaped by those lakes that have been carved out. And so, basically, our borders have been decided for us by nature. And so, no matter where you live in the state, you're only about maybe a 2.5 to 3 hour drive at the most to get to the nearest body of water. So that's kind of neat. And these lakes serve as shipping lanes, so there's a lot of commerce and things going on there as well. as well as just recreation and that type of thing. So yeah, the Great Lakes, and maybe if you can see this, I don't know, it doesn't show up too well, it's kind of dark, but that's the Mackinac Bridge, and that connects the lower peninsula with the upper peninsula. So it's about a 5-mile long bridge, suspension bridge, that was completed in 1957, I believe, and at the time it was the largest or the longest suspension bridge in the entire world. It's been surpassed now. I think there are a couple longer ones, but still a pretty impressive feat of engineering for them to design that and build that. And so that's certainly something that I would recommend you go up and see at least one time in your life, especially if you're in Michigan. Now, what is there to do? Well, there's lots of things you can do. Whatever your hobby is, there'd be some place to do that. Whether it's hunting, fishing, golfing. Gaylord is kind of a mecca for golf in the north. Lots of nice courses. Camping, hiking, anything outdoors, but also shopping as well. So you women can come, and there's even a TJ Maxx in Gaylord. I know my mom likes the TJ Maxx, so she can go and go there, and we'll go to the shooting range or whatever. But there's skiing in the winter and just kind of sightseeing in general. So that's kind of some of the things that people like to do up there. So what's my favorite time of the year? Well, I don't like this hot weather particularly well, but I'd have to say my favorite time of the year is fall, just because of the comfortable temperatures, and then you get the brilliant colors of the leaves in the fall that just seem to be just so amazing up there. For whatever reason, they just seem to be really bright, and they just pop out just like no place I've ever lived or ever been. So you can kind of see there's a shot of some of the foliage, and here was one that Jennifer took a picture of, a big maple tree, and here are a couple more with the sky, and it's just very beautiful. Now, some people will ask, well, can you see the northern lights? Well, unfortunately, we're not really that far north to where we see the northern lights like they do up in Alaska or up in Norway or somewhere like that, but we do occasionally see them. As you can see in this picture, last year, I think it was in August, where they did actually see the northern lights up there right above the bridge. And so occasionally, you can get to see that if you're lucky. You have to kind of watch the weather. They kind of keep you informed as to, what are the chances of seeing something like that, and you just kind of have to be out and see it. And usually it's at 2 or 3 in the morning, and you're usually asleep, unfortunately. But sometimes you can see it, as you can see there. Okay, well, this is a big question. Does it snow a lot? And the answer to that question is yes, it does. Quite a bit, actually. You can see here, I found this online, just a kind of a map that gives you the general, just an idea of the average snowfall for the Northeast and the Midwest. And you can see here we're up in the red section of the map, which indicates that we get anywhere between 96 and 150 inches of snow per year. So we zoom in on that. Gaylord, on average, gets a little over 140 inches of snow every season. And so that sounds like a lot, but you actually get used to it, and they have the equipment up there to handle it, and so it's not really that big of a deal. I actually like it. I like the snow. I like it more than the hot weather, for sure. So yes, we do have snow, and that's kind of what it looks like in the middle of January or February. It gets pretty deep, and after a while it starts to kind of pile up and get a little bit inconvenient, but we managed to get around. Here are some more pictures. On this one here, he's shoveling the roof. Have you ever had to do that? If you get enough snow, apparently you need to shovel the roof because it can collapse on you. Fortunately, our house has steep roof, so it'll just slide right off. I don't have to get up there and shovel it, thankfully, but some places you actually do have to watch that. And we have here on the bottom here, we have this big, they call it the ice tree. And basically it's just a metal scaffold they set up, and it runs water out of it, and it just freezes. It just keeps piling up and growing, and the colder it is, the bigger it'll get. And so that's about what it'll look in the middle of the winter. So it's kind of a neat thing to see as well. And you think, well, where does all that snow come from? Well, basically it comes from the lake effect snow. The winds coming out of Canada, the cold water, or the relatively warm water, and that cold air hits it, that creates a lake effect snow, and it creates this banding that you see here. And we're kind of right in the middle of the northern Michigan snow belt. And so even when there's not a big storm, if we just have the right wind conditions set up, then we can be getting a lot of snow where other places might not be getting any, especially in southern Michigan where there's a lot less snow. And so that's kind of where it comes from. And a couple of the bigger storms that we've had, here was one back in 2014 between November 13th and November 21st. We got, it says here, just over 43 inches of snow. So that's about 6 inches of snow a day for a week. So that was a pretty big snow event. And then this April, we had another really big snow storm, and actually came in waves. We had about 3 or 4 waves of snow that hit us. And we ended up getting about 3 feet of snow for the month of April, which is even above average for us. And so there was Jennifer out there. She was trying the snow blower and with her robe on because it was cold. She quickly gave it back to me, though. Let me finish. But we got that picture. And there was our house. You can see a lot of snow there. It's a wet, heavy snow too, so it was really kind of difficult there, to get that snow off of the driveway. Actually hurt my back, but it is doing better, thankfully. And then on the back porch, we had about 3 feet of snow just on the level, and you can see there before I shoveled it what it looked like, and then after I shoveled it, there was like a tunnel there, almost like the parting of the Red Sea, only with snow on our back deck. So that's kind of the conditions that we have to deal with up there. But all in all, we enjoy living up there. So there's another picture. All right, well, enough of that stuff. Let's talk about the church and what we're doing for the Lord, because that's what's most important. Now, as I said, we don't live in the same town where the church is. The church is actually located in a town called Roscommon, and you can see Roscommon here on a map. And it's about 40 miles or so south of where we live in Gaylord, but it's right on I-75, which makes it convenient for us. We can, make the trip in a relatively, reasonable amount of time, and even during bad weather, they keep that open. So unless it gets really bad, we can usually make it to church, even in the worst weather. And so that's where the church is located. Now, Roscommon is not quite as big of a town, but there's still about 2,000-3,000 people that live there, and there are quite a few businesses. And so there are a lot of opportunities for us there to share the word. And they certainly are aware of our presence. We've been putting out several ads in the local newspapers. We even sent flyers to every person in the area, in the mail. And so I was talking to a lady not too long ago in the grocery store, and she said that she had heard of us. And she wasn't a member of the church at all. In fact, she said she was a Seventh-day Adventist, but she had heard of us and knew of our new church there that we had started. So that was good to know that some of that advertising money was being spent wisely. People were aware that we were now meeting in that place. And so that's where the church is located. Now, people want to know, well, how many members? Well, we don't have that many members, but we do have few. So all in all, we have 12 members. And so I thought I'd just introduce you to everybody, because there's only 12. Well, obviously, this is myself and Jennifer, and I'm doing all the preaching and the speaking there, the Bible classes, but we do have a couple men that will step up and teach class and preach a lesson if need be. So I was gone this Sunday, so one of the men there was going to fill in for me, and I'll have to call him later and see how that went, but I'm sure it went fine. So there's 2. And we have here, that's Jerry and Geraldine Statler. And they were very helpful in us bonding together, I guess you could say. We met together in their house with the church for a while before we had a meeting place. And so they opened up their home for us to meet there. And then they also helped us purchase the church building that we're now meeting at. So they're two of our strongest members. And so we love them dearly. We also have Ron and Melissa. And Melissa is she just works at Walmart, just kind of an average, ordinary person. And Ron there, he's got some health problems because of his size, and so he's not able to work a full-time job, but yet he does do some work, and so he's a big supporter of what we're doing, obviously. And then we have these two, Dave and Beverly. They're from Arizona, as a matter of fact. They retired from their job, and they decided they didn't want to be so hot out in Arizona in the desert, so they moved to Michigan. And so we're glad to have them. They were from a church out there that actually supports Brother Tim Anderson in the UP. So we had that connection right off the bat, which is kind of surprising. Small world, but we're glad to have them. And he does our song leading, and he does a lot of the maintenance and kind of the handyman stuff around the building. So we're glad to have him. We also have their son, J.D., and he's a relatively new Christian. I've been studying with him quite a bit. He's having some health problems, though, right now. I don't want to go into all the details, but it's not looking good for him. He's not able to eat food and keep it down. And, he started off, he was a pretty good size, but, you can only lose so much weight before that starts to become a real problem. And so for him, it's starting to become a real issue. So hopefully we can get the doctors to figure out what's going on and provide a cure. But that's JD, that's their son. And then we also have, this is Dave and Gail McIntyre. And so Dave here, he's also has some health problems that are pretty serious. His breathing is, he has that COPD. He worked in apparently where they saw wood, and that sawdust over a period of years got into his lungs real bad. And so he's basically not going to get any better, only going to get worse. But yet he's fully on board with what we're doing and our stand for the truth, and he understands the difference. And so you don't have to be the smartest person in the world to understand these issues that we've been dealing with. And so we're so blessed to have these individuals as members of our church. And then we have Charlie. Charlie was a contact that we made through some of our door knocking efforts. So, he was open to studying, so we studied with him for a while, and I eventually baptized him. And so when the problems came, the issues got kind of out there in the forefront. He was kind of in the midst of that, but yet he saw the truth as well, and so he came over and supported us. So we're glad to have him. And that's a group picture. And we also have a couple people in there. You recognize maybe two of those. That's Rhodey and Tessie Gumpad. That's Jennifer's parents, and they were over in Michigan. They visited with us for several months during all this, after all this was happening. So just to support what we were doing. So that was a big sacrifice on their part, and we appreciate that. But that's our group right now. Okay, so how and when and did it all start? Well, I guess, let's see, let me go back to last year. We were studying some of the issues surrounding institutionalism and, the social gospel, because for whatever reason, Michigan is a real stronghold for that type of thing. And yet, I was working with the church there, preaching for them. I was there for about 3 years, and I was the full-time minister, and I was, trying to get them slowly and surely to bring them along, to understand the differences between conservative and liberal. And so, basically, I was successful up to a point, but then it finally happened where we just had to make a decision who we were going to serve, right? And there wasn't any more teaching that I could do. And so Brother John Isaac Edwards held a 3-day meeting for us, and I just told him, to go ahead and just preach the truth about these things and let the chips fall where they would. And so he did that. And, it was clear. After the second day of that meeting, there was a group that we had that wanted to follow the truth, that understood the difference, and no longer wanted to have any part of that social gospel. And the other part of the congregation, they just wanted to continue to follow the traditions of what they've always been doing. And so at that point, there was really nothing else that could be done as to salvage that situation. And so we had to go and we had to start a new congregation. And so that's what we did. Now, we didn't have a place to meet or anything like that at the beginning. And so we can see here, we were having a Bible study just at the members' home here in, it's actually in St. Helen, which is really close to where the church is. But for the meantime, that served as our meeting place on Wednesday night at least. And so we met there and we just had our Bible study, and we did our singing and prayed and just had like a normal Bible study like you would have here on Wednesday, but we just had it in their home. So you can see here, David, he was teaching the class for a while, which I allowed him to do, and I was glad to be able to listen for a change. He did a great job teaching us from the book of Acts. And but that wasn't going to, we were not going to be able to, sustain that forever. So we had to find a bigger place to meet. And so we were able to do that. Thankfully, the township hall there in town allowed us to come and hold church services in their library. There's a small part of that that's actually a library, and they have a conference room. And so we met there from, September, October, November, and December for 4 solid months. And they gave us a pretty good deal on the rental. So that's what we did for about 4 months starting out. And during that time, I asked Brother Ron Halbrook to come and hold a meeting for us. And I asked him to speak on the topic of authority, to really go in detail and really sort of ground these new members in the faith. As far as what they had, the stand that they had taken, I wanted them to be 100% confident in what they were doing was the right thing. And so I asked him to come, and that's exactly what he did. For a whole week, we studied the topic, the authority of Christ, and he's just a really wonderful teacher. He can really explain things just very clearly. And so they really just soaked it up every minute that he was there speaking to them. And that was the book that we used. It's just the class book, but it's very nice, and it has all the lessons there and everything outlined for you to follow, so you don't have to take notes the whole time, although you can take notes, obviously, but all that is provided in there. And of course, this was free of charge. He gave us a free gospel meeting and all this material, so that was just wonderful. That's exactly what we needed. And so here he's talking about some of those issues, and so everyone's listening very well and learning a lot. And so that really helped to kind of bring our group together. And there was a picture. My dad came up for that meeting. And Rhodey and Tessie were there as well. So that was a great shot in the arm for our new congregation. So where is the church meeting now? Well, now we have a building, thank goodness. We were able to purchase a church building. This was a Baptist church in the past, but the Baptist church left for their newer building, and this was on the market, and nobody was buying it. So we just made an offer. It was kind of a lower offer, and they actually responded to it. And so we were able to negotiate a deal and be able to get this place where we're now meeting. And so you can see it there. It's a pretty good size. So there's a lot of empty space in there. So we have plenty of room for people to come and for future growth. There's just another view of it. And Jennifer did a really wonderful job making the signs for the building and everything, getting it all set up. And this spring, in the month of May, we actually had another gospel meeting. This was a 3-day meeting, and Brother Larry Hafley came and he spoke to us, Mo's brother. And so there's a picture there of the people coming in and getting ready to sit down and listen. And Larry preached to us in a way that, I can't really describe. He has a way of explaining the scriptures that's really, really unique. And he just talks to you like, it's just you and him. And we really enjoyed it. We learned a lot from his lessons, and were encouraged. And we had a lot of visitors. Actually, people from even other states have come to visit us, specifically because they've heard about what's been going on. And so I think this particular meeting, I think we had well over 20 visitors one night. And this family here in the back, they come from southern Michigan every once in a while to visit us. They vacation up north, but they vacation with the intent that they're going to come and worship with us on Sunday. So it's kind of good for us and good for them as well. So they come up every once in a while. And everybody is talking after. And there you can see our foyer. And we're constantly improving things and making changes. So it's a little different now, but you can see here we got plenty of room to park, and everything is just really ready. We're ready to grow. So that's our church. And here's the setup that I have. I just have a simple setup, not like quite as complicated as you have, but just a simple projector, and I project my lessons, my PowerPoint here on the side, and I'm able to do that, and it works pretty well. We also have a track table in the back with all kinds of materials, and we occasionally will get visitors to come in from the community, and they usually take quite a few of those, and I hope they're reading them, and hopefully they'll come back with more questions for us. So you can see I publish a bulletin every week for the church, and I send that out to an email. So if you want to receive a copy, just let me know, and I'll add you to my list. And then that's kind of just the way it looks, the way it's set up. So pretty simple, but yet we're really glad that we were able to find this place, and that we have a good core of strong, sound members, and we're just looking to grow in the future. And you've definitely been a big part of helping us do that. And so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting us, supporting me, and hope that you'll continue to do so in the future. So, well, what plans do we have for the future? Well, let's talk about 2018. And we had our spring gospel meeting, but we also have a couple more, and possibly a third. In August, JR is going to come and preach for us for a 3-day meeting, August 24 to 26. And Ron Halbrook is going to come back again, so it's going to be like a 1-year anniversary from his first meeting, and we're going to kind of show him what we've been able to accomplish. And he's going to preach for us for a whole week, October 29th to November 4th. And I added a third because, well, this was kind of unexpected, but apparently this member here, this individual, Joshua Gertler, he's a member of the church. Obviously, he's sound, but he does a lot of speaking and writing about science in the Bible and origins and the Big Bang and evolution and all that kind of thing. So I talked to him, and he seems like he might be able to come for a weekend. So we scheduled that tentatively for October 6th to 7th. And so I think that'd be a good way to try and get more people from the community interested in what we're doing. When you start talking about, evolution and the Big Bang and all that kind of science, that kind of gets people, that sparks their interest, I think. So we're going to try that anyway, if we can. So that's scheduled, as I said, October 6th for 7th for right now, but that's subject to change. And then here's the contact information, and you might not be able to see it, but just see me afterwards. I can give all this information to you. We actually do have a Facebook. Jennifer maintains a Facebook account for the church, and she posts all kinds of stuff, sermons and pictures and articles and just all kinds of different things. And so that's the address for if you want to check that out. And this is our home address in Gaylord, and my email along with my phone number. So like I said, if you want to, if you need any of that information afterwards, I can give that to you. So that's all I had. But I didn't want to end my sermon without mentioning at least a few scriptures. So take out a Bible, if you would, and turn to Philippians 1, verses 3 and 5, because these are verses that have a special meaning to me, and especially as our relationship and trying to proclaim the gospel of Christ and what it means. And Paul evidently had a special relationship with the Philippians in that same way. And this is what he said about them. In Philippians 1, 3-5, he says, I thank my God upon every remembrance of you. And so I echo that same thought with you in mind. He says, always in every prayer of mine for you all, making requests with joy for your fellowship in the gospel from the first day until now. And so I thank God for our fellowship in the gospel and hope that it'll continue in the weeks and months and years to come. And so he said that they had a fellowship, and fellowship is a word, that has been dumbed down to the point so many places where it doesn't have much of a meaning, where fellowship is just having social interaction with people. It's just having coffee and donuts. But the fellowship that he's talking about here has real substance to it because it's grounded upon the faith. It's grounded upon the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's where the fellowship comes from. And I'm so glad to have that fellowship with you here in Danville. In chapter 4, he talks a little bit more about their relationship with one another. And one of the things about Paul was that he always had a positive outlook. It didn't seem like anything could get him discouraged, no matter what happened. You think the things that happened to Paul happened to most of us, we'd get discouraged. But yet this wasn't the case with Paul. And he said how he was able to maintain that. He says in verse 12, he says, I both know how to be abased and I know how to abound. He says, everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. So whatever situation he found himself in, he was able to deal with it. So how can you be that way? How can a person have that kind of a positive outlook even when things seem so negative? Well, notice in verse 13 where his positive outlook came from. He says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. He recognized that his strength in himself, it came from Christ, not just within himself, but rather it came from God through Christ, and then it was displayed in Paul's life and his work. And he says in verse 15, if you drop down, he says, now ye Philippians know also that in the beginning of the gospel, when I departed from Macedonia, no church communicated with me as concerning giving and receiving. He says, well, I didn't have any support back then, right? And most preachers, they get in a situation like that, what are they going to do? Well, close up shop and go home. Quit, I guess, probably, or go find a secular job, but that's not what Paul did. Because he had the help of the Philippians, he was able to continue his work. And he would have done that regardless, but you get the point. He says, for even in Thessalonica you sent once and again unto my necessity, not because I desire a gift. He wasn't just looking for a handout, but he says, I desire fruit that may abound to your account. So when you see the church in Michigan growing and we're doing positive things, that says something about you as well as ourselves, because you have a part in that. And I'm so blessed that you do. And he says in verse 18, he says, but I have all and abound. I am full, having received of Epaphroditus the things which were sent from you, an odor of a sweet smell, a sacrifice acceptable, well-pleasing unto the Lord. So their support that they sent him was seen as a sacrifice that they were making, a sacrifice that was well-pleasing unto God. So this was not a minor thing. And so Paul was so thankful. And he says in verse 19, he says, but my God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory by Jesus Christ. And so just as you supplied my need, God will supply your need. We all have times where, I might be in need and you might be able to help me. And there might be times in the future where you might be in need and I might be in a position to help you. And so that's the kind of relationship that we have. And we look to God to supply our needs and to give us what we need to accomplish his work. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what I've done or what you've done. It's about what we've done for the Lord. Because all glory ultimately will go to him or should go to him. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish in Michigan, to build up the church and to do the kinds of things that God has instructed us in His Word and have absolutely nothing to do with anything else. To just let go of all the traditions, all the commandments of men, and just go by the simple, pure gospel of Jesus Christ. To speak where the Scriptures speak and to be silent where the Scriptures are silent. That's what we're trying to do. And so I thank you so much for inviting me here today and giving this opportunity to speak to you a little bit about what we're doing. And so I'll stop there. But if you have any other questions that you want to ask me after the services, I'll be in the back. So don't be afraid to approach me and ask whatever you want, and I'll try to give you an answer. But that's all I have. So take out a songbook and turn to the number that was announced a while ago. And of course, we want to extend the invitation before we close any lesson.